What is up, folks? It's Dave and Duncan back from Metal Epidemic, and today we are joined by Joe from Scottish death metal band Man Must Die. Joe, how you doing, my man?
I'm not too bad, man. How are you two guys?
All good this evening.
Really, really well. Like we were talking just off air that there is absolutely no need to do anything to your accent. We'll understand, and if no one else does, then
Exactly. Deal with it, man. Come on. We're Scottish.
I don't know
I'm
how
not apologising for that.
I don't know how the closed captions work. You know how like YouTube tries to translate the closed captions. That could be a riot. We should try that later on.
Try that out.
See how that works.
Definitely.
Yeah, I've tried watching some of the reviews with the captions, and it's pretty hilarious.
Funnier than the review.
Absolutely. It's awesome to have you on. We've, like we mentioned off air, we've been following you guys since pretty much the beginning, since Start Killing, probably. The band that Duncan and I were in, we started around the same time as Man Must Die, so we're always kind of aware of you guys and the kind of involvement you had in the Scottish metal scene. And I mean, like, and that scene back then was just fucking
nuts,
awesome. See that, like, that kind of early 2000s kind of era, that was just like.
There was a lot of really good bands, and a lot of the bands, none of them sounded the same as well.
No.
Yeah.
Everybody sounded unique, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, I remember, like, I don't want to go into the When I Were a Lad.
Go to the weeds, Dave. Go to the weeds. Come on.
When I Were a Lad, I remember, like, it didn't matter, like, whatever gig you were at back in the day, there was always like a killer, like, Glasgow band on the bill. Like, it didn't matter where you were, like whether it was you guys or like Coexist or Madman or Akron and all those bands, Pig Scum and all that. Like, there was just such a really cool, like, selection of bands back then. All of them though have pretty much, like, dispersed now. There's a couple of remaining ones, like your kind of Bleed From Within and stuff like that. But how, like, did you think, like, back then you'd still be doing this, like, 20 years later with Man Must Die?
Did I fuck? No. I mean, Man Must Die was started off as a side project. It wasn't even my main band. My main band was a band called Godplayer. You probably remember them.
Oh yeah, I remember Godplayer.
Back in like 2001, it was me and Alan, the guitar player from Man Must Die's other band, and it was Alan's idea to do a kind of side project death metal thing because we like Cryptopsy and things like that, and Carcass and shit. So, it was just meant to be a demo for our own personal amusement, and then the fucking demo ended up going mental. You know, it was like mp3.com. It was like #1, and it was mental. So we were just like, okay, we weren't expecting that. So we decided to kind of start taking this a bit more serious, and that's where 20 years, I'm still fucking here, man.
That's insane. Like, 20 years, man. That's fucking crazy.
Unbelievable. I know. Tell me about it. Saying that, we've not released an album in 10 fucking years, so it's...
Well, yeah, you've only... This your fifth album, isn't it? This new one, your fifth album.
This is a fifth,
right.
We had an EP, we had an EP about 2 years ago.
Yeah. So your new album is The Pain Behind It All, which drops on February 17th. As you said, your first album in 10 years. You did the EP, like, was that like kind of 2019? Did the writing for this one did it start right after that, or is this something that's been kind of in the works a bit longer?
Not really. This kind of came about during lockdown. You know what I mean? Everybody in the planet was home. You know, unless you were an essential worker or whatever. You know what I mean? Most people were in the house chilling. So I was no different. I was self-employed, so I had to obviously take time off and stuff like that, which was terrible for the financial reasons, but hey-ho. But I was sitting about doing nothing really, and I thought, fuck about. A lot of people don't know that I write a lot of the music for Man Must Die as well.
Right.
So they just see me shouting and think I'm the fucking idiot that shouts, which I am. That is true. I am just the fucking idiot that shouts. But I said to Alan, I says, look, we've not really did anything for a long time. We hadn't really split up, but it was just like one of those things. It was like, you know, life, you know, everybody's got families, jobs and shit, so life kind of just took over. But then we had all this time on our hands, and I I said to Alan, I said, well, do you fancy maybe try to get some tracks together? And he said, yeah, and I basically just went to work. He sent me some riffs, and I basically put my riffs with his riffs, and I structured the songs, and we ended up with the new album. That's how it kinda, in a simple way, it came about. That kind of, I'm saying easy, it fucking wasn't easy. It was absolute fucking torture. But we got an album out anyway,
Yeah.
How do you like in the past, obviously, kind of having that kind of close relationship, right, and being kind of close in proximity to each other? How did that change under lockdown? Because obviously you're remote at that point. Had you done stuff before where you were sending stuff like via email or Dropbox or whatever? But had you collaborated that way before, or was that kind of a new writing experience?
No. Peace was never an option. Was pretty much like that as well.
All right.
It was me sitting behind a computer, coming up with riffs, then saying to Alan, do you have any riffs? And then he would send me some stuff, and then I would kind of put it together, structure it all and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was happening then, and a little bit less so for the No Tolerance album that we did. No Tolerance was pretty much me, Alan, and Danny, the old bass player, sitting in Danny's house in Dumbarton, kind of the three of us kind of putting the stuff together. But yeah, from Peace, it was pretty much very much similar to the new record. It was just me saying, right, send me some stuff and I'll try and put it together and try to make it make sense.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the sound, because obviously you started off in one very specific style, and over time you've grown, which I think like all bands should grow. I think if you're releasing the same sounding album 20 years later,
what's the point?
What's the point? Like you continually on every release, there's a marked change or a push in a certain direction. Like specifically the vocals more than anything. I feel that you really, like on this one specifically, really found like a ton of range. Like you do that spoken word stuff, you do like the pure death metal stuff. You've got kind of almost kind of hardcore style as well that comes into it. Is that a kind of conscious or organic approach to a record? Are you kind of going into it saying, right, I've done that record, right? I've done that style. I want to try and incorporate something else, or does it just as the songs are going, you adapt to that and bring those elements in?
I mean, well, I'm wearing a Discharge t-shirt, right? So yeah. I'm definitely more into hard. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love metal. You know, I grew up listening to thrash metal and stuff like that in the late 80s into the 90s, and I love all that. But I'm right into old school hardcore and stuff like that as well. So that's always been, well, if you've seen us live, I mean, well, I always thought we came across more like a hardcore band live than we did a death metal band. Mm-hmm. But with the lyrics and the vocals and stuff like that, it's just me and who I am. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like I definitely don't want to be the guy that just grunts constantly because it's boring as fuck. It's boring. It's not. It doesn't evoke emotion. I think playing this style of music, people think that, if somebody's growling constantly, it's dead brutal. It doesn't sound brutal to me. It just sounds fucking boring and monotone.
It becomes another. It becomes less the vocals and just another instrument.
It does.
You know what I mean?
Aye. Whereas my lyrics are a lot more personal than maybe a lot of death metal bands' lyrics, which I think maybe comes from more the hardcore side of me, things like that, where they sing more about kind of internal struggle or, social issues or whatever. But I mean, it's just in me, but I mean, when I start writing the songs and stuff, I've been doing it so long now that I just know instinctively. I don't force anything. I hear it in my head. It just pops into my head, and I know it needs this type of vocal. So that's probably why there's a little more variation on this record. It's I just wanted to make sure that when we did this album, I didn't want it to be I didn't want it to be No Tolerance Part 2. Because like people keep going, oh, does it sound like No Tolerance? I'm like, no, it fucking doesn't. I was like that because. Does fucking South of Heaven sound like Rain and Blood? No, it doesn't. But it's still a great album, And I still come from that old school mentality where, you can keep pushing and keep the integrity of your band, but you don't need to write the same song constantly. Yeah. The essence needs to be the same, and for me, the essence is still the same. If you've heard the new album, you maybe agree, you know, it's still
definitely
mega aggressive. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it's not like we've not turned into fucking My Chemical Romance or something like that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think that, you know, the songwriting has always been very important in Man Must Die. Not the technicality, not how fast they go. It's always about the song. So, you know, just try to write the best songs we can. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, if people want to call us a technical death metal band, then fair enough. But we don't think we're a death.
Yeah.
We really don't want to be like lumped in with any specific genre of metal. If people ask me what type of band, I just say it's an extreme metal band.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're a straight up death metal band. I don't think we're a grindcore band. You know what I mean? I don't think we're a tech death metal band by any stretch of the imagination. That fucking not got the skills for that. Do you know what I mean? These guys want to play 1,000,000 notes per second, and go for it. But that shit really does not interest me, man. You know what I mean? Some of the best.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird, that whole thing, because we talk about it quite a lot. It seems like the technical death metal stuff, like year on year, gets even more technical. When you when you've heard something where you're like, right, I need a cold shower, sit down in a dark room to try and process what I've listened to. Like the following year, there's a band that outdoes that, and it's weird because just now you're getting, like, we've been commenting on it. There's a groundswell of bands that are like almost rebelling and going the other way.
Yep.
And you're just getting like straight up 90s death metal at the moment, which is it's cool to listen to, but it's.
But I mean, it's a knee-jerk reaction, man. It's like anything, man. It's like you take anything in any extreme one way, there'll be a reaction that will go. People just want to do the complete and utter opposite.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And the thing about listening to you guys is,
glam metal and stuff like that. You know, the knee-jerk reaction to that was the grunge era. You know,
grunge,
You know, with all the bands that came out of Seattle. You know, so it's the same.
Because interesting. Because listen, like you see, like I always get the impression that, like, first and foremost, especially on the new album, like there's a real, and I don't get this with a lot of other kind of band, tech metal or extreme bands, where there feels like a conscious effort for song placement as well, because we commented on it, like the kind of orchestral stuff that you use to elevate it. Like there's some bands that'll be like that, has to be in every song. Like every single song has to have the orchestral bit. And what's really cool about the new releases, when those are used, they feel like those tracks are longer and they feel more important, and they're strategically placed in the album to break things up before you're then battered back down with another kind of brutal assault. And I as someone that's an albums guy, I'm not a singles guy. I like listening to full albums. Like listening to that, it's one of those things that jumps straight out. Is like, it's not a gimmick. It's utilised in an honest way to progress the album along. It's to give you that breather. It's to elevate things, to make things more grand. So when you hit that next track and blast beats kick in and things jump out like that, it's one extreme to the other. So I think that's a lost art. I think there's a lot of people that feel like if they, as bands, it's their choice to do it. If they're gonna start using those kind of huge ambient moments or huge orchestral moments, they kind of, for whatever reason, they have to be in every single song, and that just lessens the effect overall.
Well, that exactly what you're saying. If our album was wall to wall blast beats, then blast beats then become ineffective because they're overly used. Do you know what I mean? We're quite. It's not like I think, right, we need like 30% blast beats in this song. It's not how we think. It's just I've been doing it this long that it just comes I just know how to write a Man Must Die song. You know what I mean? Whatever the fuck that means, I just know. I know how I write songs, and I still draw from the stuff that I listened to when I was younger. You know, like Slayer, fucking Metallica, Sepultura. There's a reason why those bands are still massive. It's because they wrote great fucking songs. They weren't. I mean, Slayer were basically a fucking punk band. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and by the way, Slayer are like my favourite band next to Queen. Fucking, I know, work that one out. So I'm not digging that. But I mean, it's like those bands. It was about writing a fucking song that really, got you going. And I think, I hope that's kind of what we do. Do you know what I mean? At least that's what we strive to do anyway.
Yeah, that's what I kind of love about Man Must Die. You can hear the kind of small changes and additions on each album, but it still sounds like a Man Must Die album. And there's something kind of partly almost kind of nostalgic about it. And there's a couple of tracks on the new album that did remind me of a kind of earlier like Man Must Die, even God Player to an extent as well. I mentioned it in the review. There's a couple of little bits. The last track in particular, Who Goes There, Identify Friend or Foe, that gave me real kind of old school vibes, which I absolutely loved. Is there a conscious kind of effort to try and keep some of that original kind of core sound while you're still adding in new ideas?
Again, no, it's not. It's never like preconceived. Yeah. It's just I sit down, play my guitar, come up with a riff, and if I like the riff, then I decide to build a song around it. And it's the same with Alan, you know. It's that simple, you know. It's funny you should mention the last song because you mentioned Coexist. That song's dedicated to Cusey. I don't know if you ever met Cusey.
Yeah, that's right.
So that song's a wee dedication to him, man, because he passed away over about a year and a half ago now.
Yeah.
So that was my wee tip of the hat to him, you know, because he was a cool guy, and that, you know, I knew him for a very long time. I knew him from I was like 16 years old. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, it was a shame, but going back to what you were saying, it's never like I'm trying to write an old school song or anything like that. I think it's just like a good riff's a good riff. It doesn't matter what year it came out. It's you know, to me, it's what it is. And I think if you start trying to listen to things that are current, which I don't do purposely, you probably tell. Maybe that's a bad thing. I don't know. But pretty much all I listen to is Minor Threat. So I mean, but which is weird because I still write metal, but I digress. I don't. It's definitely not something that I sit and think, right, this needs to be an old school song or anything. No.
Yeah, you can hear the little hardcore influences. You can definitely hear that on this album because we picked up on it a few times throughout the album. But really cool. I'm a big hardcore guy, so that kind of stuff was just a really cool addition to the album.
Cheers, man.
What about kind of lyrically? Obviously, you mentioned a couple of things, but was there any other themes that you decided to kind of hone in on in this album?
Well, I had a mental breakdown during it, so
all right,
which was great fun. I've struggled with my mental health for fucking over 20 years. Do you know what I mean? On and off. So, but obviously, most of the songs in this album are far more. I mean, don't get me wrong, I have touched on stuff and on other albums where I have spoke about like mental health problems that I'm having and stuff. But this one, I would say like 80% of the lyrics are about the struggle that, you know, I was kind of dealing with at the time. You know, the first song on it's called fucking, it's not a song, but the first single on it's called OCD. Do you know what I mean? Which is obsessive compulsive disorder, which I suffer from, unfortunately. But but yeah, so hopefully that answers your question.
So do you feel that, like, specifically lockdown, like in general, because I know like everyone, like when especially when you're used to interacting with people, like I know myself, I've been podcasting for years, right, and I'm not the most solitary person in the world, but I know that when it came around, I was like that. Yeah, I've been training my life to sit in my house. Like we did like tons. We just like did shitloads of music reviews, and I was like, this is great. This is what I've been like an Olympian. This is what I've been training for. But on the flip side of that, for someone that has been in a touring band that's toured, you know, all over, and you know, I wouldn't think that you were necessarily an extrovert, but like being in that position where you are kind of confined and you're trying to write an album, does that force a lot of those mental health issues? Does that kind of bring them so you kind of have to like expel them into lyrics? Well, or once again, is that just that you're given a lot more time to think about what you want to put in your songs?
Well, how do I say this to make it make sense? Believe it or not, lockdown wasn't the reason for the mental breakdown. I was quite happy. I'm very much I'm quite a solitary type of dude anyway. You know, don't get me wrong, I have good friends and stuff like that. You know, I'm not a complete hermit or anything like that. But no, the lockdown didn't really have an effect on me. It was just the absolute stress that you know, that I would, because I basically took this entire album and wrote it pretty much myself, really.
Yeah.
That's including, I mean, everything, the drum patterns, the fucking vocals. And I'm not being big-headed, it's just the truth.
No.
So I was under a lot of mental stress, and I think as a result of it, that was what tipped me over the edge, really.
Right.
It was just too much to take on for one person, and like I said, I've struggled kind of on and off with anxiety for a long time, but this was obviously a contributing factor. And then when I got to the very end of it, that was when it hit big time.
Right.
It was like I was fucked, totally, mentally and utterly fucked. But it was funny because when I was writing the lyrics, when I read back in the lyrics, it was weird. It was almost like I subconsciously knew that I was having a mental breakdown, but I didn't know I was having a mental breakdown until I'd written all the songs. So it was really fucking weird looking back in the lyrics. I was like, because this album, I think a lot of the lyrics are they were more off the top of my head. Normally, I really sit and think about what I'm writing. But this stuff, it was like I was doing the demos, and I do this stupid thing when I do demos, and I'll just whisper into the mic the vocal patterns, and then I'll make up words basically to fit the vocal patterns. But I ended up keeping a lot of the gibberish that I was saying because I thought this is fucking weird. And then it started to all really make fucking sense. So it was almost like that, what do you call that writing thing that people do?
It's automatic writing.
Automatic writing. Very much like that, because when I read it back, I went, fucking hell, man, I was on the road to a fucking mental breakdown, man. So that's, if you read the lyrics, it's pretty fucking obvious it's somebody on the decline.
So you guys come back together after a bit of a hiatus, get that EP behind you, then move forward to do an album. How does that process go external from the band as pertains to getting the album distributed, labels? Was there hard deadlines on that, or are some of those deadlines you put on yourself?
There was a deadline, yeah, because initially it was supposed to just be an EP, and it was Maurizio, the singer from Cataclysm. It's his label that the new album's coming out on, Distortion Records. And we're really good friends with Cataclysm. You know, JF, the guitar player, recorded our first two records, so we've known them for nearly 20 years now. So we've been good friends with them. And I said to JF, I said, we're doing an EP, and he said, Maurizio might be interested in putting that out. That's like, has he got a label? And he was like, yeah. He's like, he'd probably be really interested. So then that kind of Maurizio got in contact, and he said, well, how do you feel about putting out a whole album? And I was thinking, for fuck's sake, man, so I need to write another fucking 4 or 5 songs. So I was like, right, okay. And then obviously, it became something that was manageable to something that fucking wasn't manageable for one guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I did it anyway, because I'm a fucking idiot. But yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of, the album was supposed to come out in October. Right. But there was a couple of issues with there was other releases or something, bigger releases, so they didn't want to put it out because it would clash and maybe get lost and all this kind of thing. So it ended up getting pushed to February. Sorry about that. It ended up getting pushed to February. But it was I mean, I put the restraints on myself more than the label, if you know what I mean. Aye.
In terms of the kind of recording part, was that all done in the house as well? Was that done at home, or did you go somewhere separate for that side of it?
No, man, I recorded all the vocals in my loft.
Nice.
So that's fun. My neighbours must have loved me. Aye. No, we all recorded in isolation. So the drummer recorded his drums himself, and we all did. We all recorded at home. So and then things were reamped. When we gave the I'm getting technical here, but when the guitars were sent over to JF, it was sent with a clean signal so he can reamp them over in his studio. So he did that, and that's kind of how it came about. But to say it was hard is a fucking understatement, because it's number one, I've never recorded myself up until I did this album. Number two, not only am I recording myself, but I need to make sure that I'm happy with my own performance, which having OCD is like torture, right? So you don't have anybody in the studio who would normally say to you, "That's good, do it again."
Yep.
You don't have that, so
Yeah.
you completely second guess yourself constantly. When in actual fact, the first fucking take you did was probably really good, but you.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing the vocals was absolute fucking torture, man. I would never do that again, man. Myself,
Right.
it was fucking hell on earth. Nice and cheery.
So did JF produce this album as well?
No, well, he mixed it.
Mixed it.
The guy that plays second guitar on the album, a guy called Mike.
Yeah.
Mike, fuck is his second name? Because we call him Raphone, but that isn't his real name. So it's Michael Allen, the guitar player. He basically kind of edited everything, you know what I
Right.
mean? You know, all that kind of shit. And then
Yeah.
sent it over to JF, and then JF mixed it over in Texas.
Right, okay. Nice.
Still bizarre. Like it blows my mind. Like, cause like as someone like who did like band stuff back in the day, like to me, the idea of recording was you like integrally you had to have people in a room, and the amount of stuff we've reviewed in the last 2 years where it's like that, it's people all over the world just.
Yeah.
Like we interviewed the guys from Blood Command who are over in fucking Norway, and they were like, yeah, we recorded like their new vocalist that basically auditioned and got into the band. She lived in Australia,
Right.
and like that, yeah, we just like we recorded our vocals over Skype, and I was like, how the fuck, how?
You couldn't tell either. Like
You couldn't tell. Like, obviously, she like had the thing. Don't know how they did it. It blew my mind anyway. Like, I don't.
Skype.
I just like I'm in the room, in the same room.
it's shite as well.
Aye,
Like,
Yeah,
Oh,
like
shite.
Skype is the worst thing ever.
Aye, but are they a black metal band though?
They're not. No, like they are the like to describe them as like imagine like pop music, but how do you describe them? Like pop punk, like metal. 80s something. It's really good. Their new album's fucking great,
Sounds
but
interesting.
she has a very like she has to be able to do clean vocals and they have to be well recorded, and
Aye.
it's just bizarre to hear. But like the amount of press statements we've read were like that, yeah. During COVID, remote like so in Poland sent his thing, and you're just it's a completely it forces people into that. But what's great to hear is most people talk about the better experience of doing that. And what I like is your experience of that, which is actually, whilst you think this is freeing, not having people look at me, it's the other way around, because you do, like, everyone when put on their, like, you do a podcast as well, you know yourself, you listen back to it and go, oh, fuck.
I mean,
going to chop that out because that was a silly thing to say or whatever.
If you're not being self-critical, then there's something wrong, you know what I mean? But if you take it to the absolute extreme, like I did, then it gets it becomes like butting your head against a wall, because it's like, you know, 2 steps forward, 100 steps back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in terms of like obviously the album's about to come out. What are you guys lining up in terms of? Are you thinking tours? Are there? What's that going to look like? Because obviously we're hearing just now from many different angles that, you know, like bands are putting out a lot of stuff, but like getting the touring side of things going just now is a fucking nightmare.
Well, exactly. I mean, we'll just kind of take it as it comes, you know.
Yeah.
We definitely want to play shows, do you know what I mean? But like you said, everything's kind of fucked after COVID, you know. I don't think everybody's kind of fully recovered from that. You know, I think everything's still kind of on its arse. But no, we want to play, man, definitely. Do you know what I mean? It's definitely something we want to do. So we will eventually get out there and do something. Aye, definitely. And if we can get on some festivals and stuff like that, you know, we usually get asked to play some European festivals and stuff like that. So no doubt they'll get in contact, and aye, we should be all right.
When was the last thing you did, like live? When was the last kind of
Live?
show you did?
Oh, when was the last thing? Fucking hell. No, I can't even remember. Oh, it was Damnation Fest.
All right.
What was that? 2000 and... What the fuck was it? 2021?
Right.
All right, so not that long ago.
Okay.
Aye. So that was the last thing that we did, aye.
Oh, nice.
because like there's that. I suppose that's the other thing. Like we hear is like the lockdown thing was an opportunity for some bands, like side projects in particular, where like that they'd only put out one thing in like 20 years because it couldn't all be. Then there was no time, and then they all come back together. But then the flip side of that is like you got groups kind of reforming.
Aye.
Yeah.
That hadn't done it, like, and I've seen some of the live performances, and you're like, that she just kept it as an album, dude. Like that, you're like that's it, that time has passed you by. Like just like
maybe the same for us.
no, like if you only played a couple of years ago, you're in there. Like some of these ones, you're talking acts that haven't done anything in like 15 years, and then it's just like,
especially if you're playing like extreme stuff like that, you know.
It's weird because bands go one way or the other. I think they either, you can hear the ones that still want to do something as opposed to ones that feel like they're obligated to do something. Like we're going to be later on after this reviewing the new See You Next Tuesday album, which I mean it's 8 years or something since their last release, and they have not missed them.
It's 15 years since the last release.
15 years? I thought it was 8.
No,
well,
2008 was the last album. 2008 was the last album.
Like, they've not missed a fucking beat, man. Honestly, they've just like they've come back nastier.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear like you say, like some bands like just they come back because they kind of feel like they have to do something, and there's no longer an excuse because of the time thing. And then you listen to what they put out, and it's. I mean, to them, I suppose, you can sometimes hear when a band's going through the motions. It's basically a shorter way of saying what I want to say.
Aye, I mean, exactly. I mean, if you're doing it because you need to pay your bills, then it's something that you're doing it for a different reason. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. You're doing it because it's your livelihood, you know, whereas we didn't have to do a new Man Must Die album, do you know what I mean? So, you know, take that how you will, you know, whether it's good or bad or whatever, do you know what I mean? But it's like, you know, I definitely don't think it went through any of the motions. You know, if anything, I think, you know, we kind of thought, fuck it, let's just try some weird shit.
It's so cool. Like we were saying, like, because like we were trying to clock back when it was that like we both heard you for the first time, and it kind of blows my mind that like one, you're still on the go, but two, you're still like putting out stuff that feels relevant. And that's the big. I think that's a key thing. Like when you listen to music, like is like it's 2023. How relevant is the album that's come out? You know, how, like, especially for longer term bands, like you listen to, well, we loved that last Napalm Death album because amazing. More like that. They've been on the go for fucking like 30 years, and they're putting out something that doesn't sound like anything they've done before, and it sounds relevant. It sounds like the band's got something to say. So that's what we loved about the new album is like we sit down to it, we could hear. There's a passion to do it, and that passion, like sometimes, like you mentioned earlier, that passion overweighs like the most technical guitar riff you've ever heard. It's great that you can play that. Can't wait to see you play it live. But you know, like if I don't feel it, if I feel like a robot's playing it, then what's the point?
Well, that's the thing as well with a lot of the actual performances in this. You know, it wasn't done to a grid or anything like that. So I mean, it's very live sounding. I think you know, as far as like modern death metal goes, you know, what I mean, I think there's definitely a vibe to the songs. They don't sound sterile. I think that's one of the big differences between this new one and the last two. I think the last two are a little bit. We never gridded them either. I don't mean that, but what I mean is I think for me they're just a wee bit too tight. I know that's silly because everybody thinks in death metal everything needs to be like ridiculously tight.
Yeah.
Although my dog's just walked in. But it's like, we wanted it to sound like it had some, you know, the songs had some breathing space in them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, who the fuck wants to listen to something that sounds like a computer?
Well, there's a weird undercurrent of people that, you know, if it becomes less about I think it becomes less about, and the way I described it once before, and I know that Dave's not completely on board with this, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. It was one of the things we come at odds at, especially in death metal, is like if I am only remarking on what's being played and not the actual song, I don't enjoy that experience. I much rather enjoy the experience of listening to the song and not necessarily fully dissecting every nuance of every guitar riff that's being played. I'm a songs guy, I'm an albums guy, and that's the way I approach it. So that's why a lot of the kind of extreme technical death metal stuff falls flat for me.
Definitely.
Because as a musician, I can sit and listen to it and go, that's jaw-dropping what he's doing. But then try to take a step back to contextualise it and how it fits in a song, I just, like, my brain's like, nope,
Nah.
not doing that. We're
I
not
think
doing
as
that.
well, it's like, I'm probably going to piss a lot of folk off here, but I don't give a fuck. It's like, I think a lot of tech, these new bands are very geeky.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, you know, you've seen my band live, you know, we're a fucking mess a lot of the time, but that's part of the carnage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, if you want to listen to the record, stay at home and listen to the fucking record. When you come and see it live, it's like, it's going to be a different experience. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's just the way it's going to be. I'm not going to tell my drummer to put a click track on his fucking headphones and play a click track live. Do you know what I mean? Like, no way. That's never going to happen. Again, it just comes back to the kind of the hardcore thing again, man. It's like, it's definitely much more in line with that than it is death metal in a lot of ways. Do you know what I mean? It's a lot looser, more aggressive. Do you know what I mean? I said this in one of the other interviews. It was like one of the guys was talking about technical metal shit, and I was like, look, man, I said it can be as fast and widdly as it needs to be, but for me, it doesn't sound aggressive. Or, you know, for me, you know, like, you know, Napalm Death could be, you know, when they do the kind of grind parts and the kind of hardcore parts, those parts have much more impact on me than some guy playing 1,000 notes and some fucking drummer, you know, playing 1,000 BPM and shit. Like, I'm fucking no interest in that. Do you know what I mean? I think, again, it's probably just because of my, you know, where I come from and my age and stuff like that. You know, if I was 20 years old, I'd probably be into all that shit, but it's just not, it just doesn't interest me, man. Music needs to move me, you know, in one way or another. So if it doesn't move me, then what the fuck's the point in even listening to it? You know what I mean? If you want to sit and dissect how many notes is getting played, then be a fucking mathematician or something. You know what I mean? I listen to music to enjoy it. I don't listen to it to fucking sit and go, wow, that guy's fucking amazing on the... Don't get me wrong, man. You know, fucking Neil Peart from Rush or something like that, you know, he plays a drum part, you're like, oh, that's cool as fuck. But the songs are good. Do you know what I mean? If it was just all fucking Whittlefest and drum fills every 2 seconds, then what's the fucking point? Do you know what I mean? That's just me. That's just
I do feel there's a missed opportunity for a Whittlefest, which just has technical death metal bands. Though.
There you go. You've heard your first, mate. Whittlefest.
Whittlefest has no porta potties at all, though. You have to hold it in and constantly a cinder running water in the background. Can't wait. Well, somebody needs to make that happen.
Definitely. Let's do it.
I suppose the other thing, like, because you touched on quite a few things there. I suppose that, like, in terms of like the album, you're gonna get. You've been asked this already. I don't think you haven't, but like the album's like about to drop. At what point do you think about what's next? I know obviously you just want to get this out, people hear it, you know, get some live shows. But are you, because you're a band that did put like a unofficial hiatus on your thing? Is that even something that crosses your mind, like in terms of like what we do to follow this up, or is it once again more a kind of as and when I feel like it's time to start looking to move into the next thing? When ideas strike me, that's when I sit to think of that. Yeah,
absolutely. I need to be in the mood to write the style of music that I write in Mammoth Style, because I write all different types of music outside of Mammoth Style. You know, I'm right into like The Cure and like Radiohead and Depeche Mode and all that type of shit as well. So I write a lot of stuff for myself that's much more like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I mean, I need to get into a certain headspace. Maybe that's not a good fucking thing then, because you know what happened and eventually happened. But I need to be in the mood to write that type of music, because like a lot of the time, I think music's like that, isn't it? I mean, it's like if you're churning out the same music. Well, let's put it this way, right? For me, you're not being true to yourself. If if every single song that you put out sounds exactly like everything else you've put out, then how can that be honest? I personally don't see how that can be honest, because you know, you change as you get older. Do you know what I mean? And I don't mean you need to get soft, because the new album is not fucking soft. Do you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? You know, if you just need to fucking write fucking honest music, and if you don't write honest music, then what the fuck's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sometimes I appreciate bands that, like, honestly, like that they're going a certain direction and they fully lean into that direction, and it might not be the best album the band's put out, but you can hear that they were committed to doing it.
Aye.
As opposed to, like, because you get that thing all the time said to you, like you mentioned it earlier on, where you have success with one album, and then the question inevitably comes back to, when are you doing
that part 2,
that album again? And I've always found that the most frustrating thing ever as a listener, like, because you have that album.
That just makes me want to put out a reggae album just to annoy folk. Just to annoy people.
But the thing is, like, that album, like, in a lot of respects, that album is born from, you know, it's a time capsule of that year, your experiences and all the rest.
Exactly.
If you haven't moved on as a person,
aye,
like 10 years later, if you're still that person, like,
aye,
who was like, I feel sorry for you. Like, like, life changes you and it makes you different.
You know, you should. Aye, exactly. Can you imagine for a lot of people, I guess, you know, putting on a battle vest for 40 years and going to whacking every year that's their life, and that's cool. But I'm into way too much different types of music. Do you know what I mean? And like I said, I think that, you know, the essence of what we do is, I'm still very protective of that, and it's still 100% on the new album. Definitely. I mean, it still sounds like us, but I think the songwriting for me has got better. You know, like, so just the way the songs are structured, they're more to the point. There's less fucking about. You know, there's sometimes you don't have to have like fucking 100 riffs in a song. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's good to just take it back and get to the point of the song, and, you know, distill what you have, because it's like anything. The more you put into things, okay, there is the exception to the rule. You know, that, like, some prog bands, you know, that have big epic songs and they're great, but if every song's get like 100 riffs, what's the fuck, you know, you end up with, for me, just, it's like you were saying, going back to how we structured the album and the dynamics, we lose all dynamics. And for me, an album needs to be like a kind of journey almost, and I think when I put this album together, I sat with all the songs, and I kind of, in my head, I was like, right, this makes sense to me. Like, do you know what I mean? This is the way these songs should. I hear that song going into the next song. I hear that song going into it. So I was thinking very much about the dynamics of the album, because you don't want to front load it with too much fast stuff and then put too much slow stuff. So you scatter it about, and then, you know, it just makes an interesting listen. And I'm very much an albums guy, like you know, you two guys. And I grew up listening to, you know, fucking Pink Floyd, The Wall. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, you know, it's all kind of going the way it should go. You know what I mean? And I kind of try to take that into our band as well. You know, that kind of classic sort of old school way of thinking in that respect.
It's definitely there. Definitely that. Like we said, that it's a lost art. I think there's you can tell but I think it's all, like, it might just be me, like, talking about it. I think it's obvious when I'm listening to an album where I know, like, there's thought went into the structure here, as opposed to we wrote 20 songs for the new album, we picked the 10 heaviest songs. Like, that's great, you picked the 10 heaviest songs, but did those 10 heavy songs flow into each other? Like, or you get, like, songs that, well, I'm trying to remember, there was one last year, I don't want to shame any band, but there was one last year where I cannot, like, it was like the first 3 songs started, they were all in the same tempo, and they all started off pretty much the same.
I know exactly what album it is. I know exactly. I bet I know what album it is.
I can't remember. I genuinely can't remember.
Right, I don't really want to shame this band, but I'm not going to shame them. I'm not going to shame them, but I'm just going to say it anyway. That new Decapitated album's like that. The first 3 songs start exactly the same way, man.
Yeah.
And like, to me, that is a band with a bunch of songs, like, saying, right, here's our 10 favourite songs or our 12 favourite songs, and we're going to put them on the album, as opposed to, right, does this flow as an album? And that those are 2 different things entirely. I also think, without going down the rabbit hole of talking about, like, digital releases of music, I think that's been a contributing factor, because I think nowadays when bands release albums, like, we were talking about, like, I think Gojira's new album, the pre-order, like the first single dropped like 9 months before the album came out, or 10 months. By the time the album's dropped, you've heard 5 singles completely out of context on the album. And at the point of that, we were still sitting like that going, I don't know kind of what to do with this.
You don't look forward to it because you've heard it. You've heard most of it.
Yeah, exactly like that. Yeah.
I think it forces, it weirdly kind of forces bands to look at releasing albums in a different way as well. It becomes let's get the most, like we said before, the most brutal songs, or the ones that have all the melodic hooks and all the rest, and we put them that way, and then we shove them on an album, because ultimately the experience of listening to an album is different to people nowadays. So it doesn't matter. They'll pick and choose what they want to listen to. So we'll just give them the 10 heaviest tracks, as opposed to hit and play and experiencing an album from start to finish. Well, it might make us all sound old, but I think it's important.
Listen, to be honest, you're doing it. If you're a musician, I'm speaking for myself here. I'm doing it for me, and if other people like it, then that's cool. That's you know what I mean. As selfish as that sounds, it's got to be that, man. Because I'm not going to put anything out that I can't stand behind. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like you were saying, it's like, you know, the bands that cater to a certain sound. It's like, I really don't see the point. And I think when we released the first single off the album, I knew right away, I was like, this is going to annoy a lot of people, but I didn't give a fuck because I think that's a great song. So I was like, that's going out, man. I was like, I don't care. And it's been really cool because for the first time, normally when we release a single, right, most people, this is fucking so brutal, this is so fast, this is the first time where I've heard people say, this is a great song. Yeah. I'm just saying what people have, you know, feedback we've received, and I've never heard people say that. They usually comment how aggressive it is or how this or that, but a lot of folk are actually saying this song is a really good song. And I was like, well, I think it is as well. But we could have went with the. I mean, you know yourself. You've listened to the album. There's loads of fast shit on it. So
dude, there's a bit like we talked about. There's a bit midway through the album where a blast beat comes in, and I actually felt myself go like that. How the fuck? How? How? Does it, like, do you have to stretch? Do you have to do I genuinely don't, like, because it comes out of fucking nowhere and it is fast as fuck. But the dynamics on the track aren't like, this track has to be like the fastest thing ever and it has to go all the way through. It's so well used in context that when it drops off from that, like the next bit, which is slower, kicks in and you're just like, oh, it's fucking heavy as fuck. And it's that level. As you talk about, that's what I like the term of, instead of trying to say it's death metal or pigeonhole, just saying it's extreme, because that's the experience.
Totally, aye.
And you can only gauge levels of extremity based against something else.
Yep.
Whether it's something extremely slow or something extremely fast. And I think that's the dynamic that you guys have fucking nailed.
Thanks very much.
It's really, really, really good.
Thanks very much. But like you're saying, it's like we could, you know, we can do fast, no bother. It's never been an issue, man. Do you know what I mean? But you know, again, it just I keep feeling like I'm boring you guys by saying the same thing, but it just does come down to the song needs to be good, man. The song needs to be good, and if it's not got any blast beats in it, so fucking what, man? You know, and there's plenty of other fast shit on it if that's your thing. If you know, so you know, there's a bit of, I mean, it's like people like forget that we've got slow songs on previous albums. It's like, you know, like one of it was funny as fuck because there's been very few negative comments, but there was one guy I was actually laughing my ass off when I read his fucking Facebook. But it was, this song is slow, it's shite. And I was like, right, all right, cool. But it was funny. I loved the comment, and I put excellent. You know, because that shit doesn't bother me, because that guy's only wanting to hear fast stuff. So it's not even a proper critique of the song. It's just, it's not fast. I don't like it.
It's not a proper critique of the stuff you do either, then.
Aye.
You know what I mean? It's so bizarre, man.
But it's funny because then a bunch of our fans piled on this poor dude. And we're like, have you heard it comes in threes? Have you heard the price you pay? Have you heard this? Have you heard that? And it was just a bunch of slow songs that we'd done. And the guy was just like, I was just like, just leave the guy alone, man. You know,
I got slated online. I don't like this is the internet. This is what I love the internet. I also fucking hate the internet. But like we did a reaction to, I think it was the first Megadeth single off the new Megadeth album. A fucking banger, right? I'm not a Megadeth fan. Never been a Megadeth fan, right? So of course we start the video and we're talking about Megadeth and none of us are real fans of it. We like the occasional song or whatever. Right. And all I said was, it was a harmless fucking comment, I was like that, Dave Mustaine, lyrics, kind of shite. I was like they're a bit cheesy, they're a bit shit, right, like that. Then we listened to the song, fucking mega positive all the way through it, got to the end saying like, you know what? Fucking looking forward to this album. Off the bass, like that, amazing. Like, fucking first comment like that. Dave Mustaine writes great lyrics. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Did you listen to anything beyond that point? Or was that you judged everything based on that one thing? And it's the same with, well, we've mentioned before, it's the same with singles or songs or whatever. Like, you're judging 12 songs based on one song, and that's not how the band wrote that one song. They wrote that one song to be accompanied by
a bunch of
11 other songs, and that's how you review it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like anything in it. If it's taken out of context, you can't see the whole picture. You know, I mean, if a band I love releases a song and I'm not 100% into it, I don't. Well, number one, I don't hit the fucking internet and start giving
I will take my opinion straight to the public.
Exactly. I usually go, well, you know, let's see how the album shapes up, you know what I mean? And then see by the time it's in the album, I like it.
Yeah.
If I didn't like
We've
it
said
already.
that before, the album thing can change tracks completely based on what comes before and after. Like you can have an idea how, but it's how it sits on another reason. And we've heard tracks that are like, we've talked about, there's a couple of like releases where it's the last song, and stereotypically bands will either use the last song as a statement of intent or do weird shit because it's the last song, and you hear it and you're like, I don't know how it plays. Like the new Cancer Bats album, I'm sure one of their early singles was like the last track.
Right.
The first single I think was the last track.
The first single was, and we were listening and we were going that.
Aye.
I don't know. I don't know because it sounded very much in line with their like older stuff, right. And then you're like that. So it's the whole album like that. If you disregarded the last three albums, like you don't know. And then, but there's an exciting part of that as well because you know you get to hear it in context, and it's always about context is king. Totally. But if you're purely judging like a band's new release based on the one track you heard and because it didn't sound like you thought it should sound, it's like, well,
totally. I think the single the single that you guys released, the title track, again, like hearing that on its own, I mean, maybe like guys having like weird comments about it, but when you hear it in context on the album, it completely works. Like I was just
placed perfectly.
Whoa, this is fucking like, I think it's the third track, I think, isn't it, on the album?
Yep.
And when it kicked in, I was like, oh right, wait a minute, I didn't expect it to go here, but like it absolutely works. The change in tempo and stuff is just like spot on. I was like, this is really cool. It's a really cool rhythm as well. That track, it's got like a wee kind of a wee bit of a sugary type feel about it, which I really loved. But I thought it was perfect. Like the way it was placed was really, really cool.
Cheers, man.
It becomes, like I say, it's the listening experience. It's listening to an album opposed to making a playlist.
Aye,
yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean?
Yeah,
exactly. But it's like you were saying that, you know, the obviously this will probably come out when it doesn't matter if this is out when the album comes out. I'll just say it anyway. But the first thing's obviously a kind of noise thing, but then it kicks out. The first song's one of the most brutal things I think we've ever did, and it's so. You're not going to follow that up with another fast as fuck song because it doesn't make any sense. You've just had your cunt smashed in. So the next step is to show, right, here's something new you've never really heard before.
Yep.
And then once you've kind of came to grips with that, then you get a bit more of the kind of familiar stuff, you know. And then, you know, it's good to do a little bit. Variety's a spice of life, man. You know,
100%.
if everything's spicy all the time, then it kind of is shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's plenty of variety on this album. I can't see people disliking this, to be honest. Like I really can't.
Cheers, man.
There's so many good tracks on this album.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
So I think we've probably taken up enough of your time, right, Joe?
Anyway.
thanks so much for coming on and chatting about the band and the album. The album's out on the 17th, obviously, of February. The Pain Behind It All. Definitely check it out. I'll put some links below to the band, to the pre-orders, all that sort of stuff, so you can check it out. Anything else you want to mention? You mentioned you got another podcast. You want to mention that as well? You got a podcast you want to plug?
Well, I don't really know, man, because I don't really think people will be checking it out. But
listen. I'm an obsessive podcast listener, and I didn't know that you had a Queen podcast. So, like,
well, let's just get this right. Freddie Mercury era Queen. Nothing after that, right? So
okay.
not the joke that the band is now, man. I'm talking about back when they were actually at a band.
What's wrong with Big Adam? Big Adam Lambert? No.
Fuck, he's peace.
Don't play into his games. Dave's a constant shitstorm. Don't let him do it to you, Joe. Don't let him do it to you.
Aye, so if you're into Queen, Freddie Mercury era Queen, it's called In the Lap of the Pods, Queen podcast, and it's on Spotify and loads of other shit. And I also do another podcast with a good friend of mine who used to be the guitar player in Churn, a guy called Scott Walker. I don't know if you know Scott.
Nice.
All right. He was in Pig Scum as well, wasn't he?
He was, aye. He's been a pal of mine for a long, long time. So
nice.
Me and him do
he did sound at the Barfly?
Yeah, he does his sound in Sleazy's now.
Oh, right,
cool. Does he? All right.
Cool.
He's been the sound man in Sleazy's for about 12, 13 years or something like that. He's the house guy. But
he did our sound in the Barfly a couple of times, I remember.
Aye.
Really
Scott's brilliant, man. Great sound man, great guy. But the podcast I do with him's called Shit You May Not Have Seen, which was basically kind of films that we think are kind of flew under the radar sort of thing.
Oh, you're talking about language now.
Aye, so we do a lot of weird, odd shit.
Right.
You know, and a lot of it's kind of horror kind of thriller. You know, just it tends to be kind of messed up shit, if I'm brutally honest, because just the taste in films that we both have. But aye, so check them out, man.
100%. Yeah, I've got a horror podcast as well.
Sweet.
Which I've had for like fucking 10 years now.
Well, in the back,
I think I might have not that what humble brag. I think I might have the most episodes of any horror podcast like ever.
Magic.
What's it called? Lockdown had a lot to do with that.
What's it called?
Podcast Under the Stairs.
Right. As in people under the stairs.
Yes, yeah. Not because I'm like a super fan of people running around with gimp suits with shotguns.
Why not?
I mean, on a Saturday, why not? No, like it just at the time it sounded alright. Like need to be a horror name, but kind of work and all the rest. I think I'm at last count. I think I'm about 1,200 episodes or something. Yeah, it's been a while. I've been doing it for a bit.
You get me on it, man.
Dude, listen. We'll hook up after this. 100%, man. 100%. You can pick the most messed up shit or like the most cheesy shit or whatever, and we'll chat about it.
Magic.
Holy.
Sounds good, man. I'm up for it.
Yes.
Nice one. Joe, it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, guys.
Oh, I was going to say you hitting stop. Well, you can edit that bit out, Dave, that makes me look like an absolute cunt.